I think the last time that I spoke, I was just getting ready to have my exchange surgery. So I was just sort of in the lull after chemotherapy and getting ready to have the surgery and sort of not knowing what to expect. And the exchange surgery went very, very well. It was a little more painful than I thought, I think, which people tend to find it's better not knowing what you're getting into until you get into it. So the exchange surgery went well. And then at the end of August, I started my radiation. And for some reason, I think radiation to me was the most intense emotional feeling that I had. Chemotherapy, you just sort of go, you sit in a chair, they put a needle in your arm, they administer the medication, and then you sort of come home and maybe you feel the side effects within the first week or so. And I did have some side effects, but nothing like extreme. So I was able to always get my treatment. But with radiation, because I have left-sided breast cancer, they're concerned about how the radiation affects the heart. And they do, where I go, a breathing technique. If you can hold your breath for a certain amount of time, then they do the radiation while you hold your breath. And I had to get 3 blasts of radiation, I guess that's what you might call it. So I had to hold my breath for 3 different times for about 30 seconds. And for some reason I had like psyched myself up that this was, because I had to participate and it wasn't just going and sitting there or laying there, that it was going to, I just freaked myself out so bad that like when I went in for the simulation, they were like, just relax, calm down, it's going to be fine. And if at any time during the radiation you lose your breath, the machine is such that it will shut itself off. So it doesn't continue to give you the radiation. And then you just take another deep breath and it continues the radiation. So I went to the simulation and then they, start you basically the next day. And, I went in and it's interesting how what they say takes like 15 minutes really sometimes can take a half an hour, depending on if they have you positioned correctly, if you can give the breath correctly. As far as like how to control my own anxiety, it was instead of thinking like, I have to do this 3 times, or I have to do this for 5 weeks, or I have to do this 5 days in a row. It's just like, I have to get through this one thing. Like, I just have to get through the sound that you can hear the machine make. Like it makes like a buzz. So I just know I have to start, hold it. I hear the buzz. And when that buzz is over, I can exhale. And I think just knowing you only have to do it for that tiny amount of time, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I'm done for today. And I don't know, everybody there, they say like sort of the attitude you come in with is, how you tend to go through the rest of your treatments. And I've always, I think, had a very upbeat, very positive, very happy to be there and very appreciative of everyone that works there. And I felt like everybody always treated me the same way. So it was actually sad today when I left and they were giving me hugs, and it was just like, I guess for the last, 5 weeks, like those people have become my best friends or my posse or the people that I hang out with. Cause I see them, even though I only see them for 20 minutes to an hour a day, I see them more than some of my close friends that I feel like I've been disconnected with over the last probably 10 months. It was an interesting, I think, experience for me because being in the radiation waiting room, you start to see other women who've sort of been through the same kind of journey, or maybe other women that have a different kind of cancer or are getting different kinds of treatment. And sitting in there, some people are very open to sharing their story and other people are very private and don't want to speak. So I found it very interesting to sort of, I don't know, become comrades with some of the women in there. And it was hard when they started leaving and all of a sudden, like, you're the old one that's sitting there that's been here for weeks and weeks. And then I finally met this one woman that came in about 2 weeks ago, and I enjoyed seeing her most mornings when I was there. And I was very, very sad today that I didn't see her because I just wanted to wish her well because she has 3 more weeks. And last week she actually said to me, I don't know who I'm going to talk to when you leave. So I think that was my sad part of today, was that I didn't get to see her. So the radiation is done and I'm relieved about that. But they also say that like your symptoms are going to peak in the next 2 weeks. So the burning on the skin or the agitation will get worse before it gets better. So I'm not, I guess, looking forward to that. But so far I feel pretty lucky with the fact that it isn't terrible. So when I sort of start to think about the reality of wow, because the last 10 months of my life have really been controlled by what treatment, what doctor's appointment, or what time in between to get healthy before the next treatment. And now all of a sudden, it's like, wow, it's like totally over. And now, I'm not going to see those people every day. I'm not going to get like a hot chocolate from the hot chocolate machine, which I just love, even when it's hot outside, just because it tastes so good. And, I'm not going to see the lady at the front desk who knows me by name to check me in. And who am I going to talk to, or who can I reach out to talk to about my cancer, or about my own anxiety moving forward about my cancer that I had. My friends are really fantastic and really wonderful, but I don't think unless you've totally gone through it or have seen it firsthand that you can totally sympathize with somebody. All of my friends were like, wow, gosh, it's gone by so quickly. And I just think, for who? Like, I was like, gosh, it's already almost October and I can't even remember like last Christmas, because I got diagnosed right before Christmas and it's just all like a blur. And then it's like, what did I even do this summer? I tried to go to the beach with the kids before I had to have my exchange surgery, because then I couldn't go swimming. And it's just like, my kids have been so awesome at adjusting to, we've had somebody living with us besides, it's myself, my husband, and my 2 children, but we've had either my mother or my mother-in-law, who live out of town, have come to stay with us for the last 10 months. They've been like rotating. And my sister even came for a little bit. So they don't even know what it's like, to not have that extra adult around. Or, my kids right now have been sharing a room. So now all of a sudden it's like, okay, you don't have to share a room anymore, but I don't even know that they're going to want to go back to sleeping in separate rooms. I would say to somebody else approaching it is, be honest with yourself about your emotions, and be honest with your doctors, and be honest with the people that are supporting you at home. Like my husband's like, I know you've handled this extremely well. Like, sometimes he's like, I look at you and I'm like, wow, when is the freak out coming, or when is the meltdown coming? He's like, you've been so strong through the whole thing. He's like, I want you just to know that it's okay to freak out. And that was probably a few weeks ago when we were realizing, we had our 10-year anniversary and sort of coming upon this, like what we call milestone. And, yesterday I was just like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, when is an ache, and when is an ache something to worry about? So I think sort of embarking on your last day, it's like, okay, be honest with yourself that, even though the treatment's over, your body is still recovering from all of the stuff it's endured, and our bodies are amazing. And to think that, my body's been through chemo and surgery and now radiation, and, it looks normal on the outside for the most part, but it's like on the inside, it still has to heal, and your mental state still has to heal. And, they always say like life before cancer and life after cancer. Like, what is this new life after cancer? And sort of the farther you get away from this last day of treatment, the more quote unquote normal your life will get back to. And it's like, just take baby steps. Like, and that's going to be probably the hardest thing for me. Is before this, I was like such a doer with, all the stuff at my kids' school, and helping my husband out with some side projects, and making sure my kids, were in activities. And I just, was on the go all the time. And now all of a sudden I have to take a step back and say, well, gosh, I have to take care of myself first. Like, I have to make sure that I do get rest. Because if I get tired and worn out, I don't know what's going to happen. Am I going to be like, have to sleep all day or whatever it is? So I just have to remind myself that I have to take, I guess, better care, or a more watchful eye of myself. And if I need help, I need to ask for it. And that also is the hardest thing too, is I think as moms, or as strong women that go through stuff, it's hard to say like, I need help, or, and my friends have been great. Like, call me if you need help. But sometimes you're like, oh gosh, I feel weak. Or I feel if I ask somebody, they're going to say, gosh, you always ask me for help. Like, I always have one friend that I've always turned to, because our kids are the same age, and she lives right down the road. And I feel like, gosh, I use her all the time. But she's like, that's what I'm here for. Like, and a lot of people, that's the other thing, is I think like at the beginning of treatment, there are so many people, like once you get the diagnosis and start treatment, like the whole entire community, you know, came out and was very like, oh my gosh, what can we do? How can we help you? Like there was meals at my house all the time. And it was really great because at that point, when you're still trying to figure it out, you get the help and the support. But as time goes on, you know, 10 months later, there's no more meals at my door, which is fine. But at the same point, it's like, if I need the help now, I have to ask for it, as opposed to those people like, you know, basically waiting outside my door for me to like say, hey, I need something. So now I have to be the vocal person to speak up. So I would just say, don't be afraid to ask for help. People want to help. People, you know, put themselves in your shoes. They say, oh my gosh, if that had happened to me, I don't know how I would have coped. They're like, holy cow, you've done amazing over the 10 months and you haven't really asked for anything. So, you know, how did you do it? And part of it's like, I have, you know, a great mom, a great mother-in-law, a great husband, and 2 great kids. And I know I'm very, very lucky. I know some people don't have support at home. And I think if you can't get support at home, or it's not as supportive as you want, you know, you have to be willing to talk about it. Because you never know who out there has gone through something similar. I just happened, like literally last fall, I was at soccer with my son and there was this woman there. We sort of were talking. And then, I don't know, one day they were handing out t-shirts and her son picked a pink t-shirt. And somebody was like, oh, that's unusual that your son picked a pink t-shirt. She's like, oh, well, you know, I had breast cancer. You know, I'm a 3-year survivor. And so I was thinking to myself, oh, wow, you know, she's so strong and you never would have known by looking at her. And then literally like 3 weeks later, I found out I had breast cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I ask this woman, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to figure this out? And then I, thankfully, I guess, didn't actually have to have that conversation. My best friend was at soccer with this woman and said the reason that I hadn't been there was because I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. And this woman was like, please let her, you know, call me. Just tell her to call me, tell her to email me, tell her to get in touch with me. And I did. And by making that connection with this woman that I barely knew at soccer, she introduced me to like a Facebook group that's a closed group for Connecticut women that are breast cancer, either patients or survivors. And through that, you're able to ask people questions about what am I supposed to expect during chemo? Is my hair going to fall out? How long is it going to take to grow back? And, you know, so you don't, you know, because your husband or, you know, somebody in your family is never going to be able to answer those questions. And maybe it's not something that's quite doctor, you know, you could ask your doctor, but sometimes it's 11 o'clock at night and you have these questions and you're like, who do I ask? And Google, you can Google it, but then you freak yourself out with whatever you read and find out. So at least you know through this group that it's people that have been through something that's very similar, even though, you know, their treatment might be slightly different. But it's interesting because you can get, you know, who had this kind of surgery to have this kind of implant, or somebody that had, you know, the trans flap, and you can get all the information you need there. And then even sharing your story, whether it's with your group of friends, like I found a friend from high school who was like, I was moved by your story. And then, you know, she ended up, she'd had very, very early stage breast cancer earlier. And now she's unfortunately back in the treatment room with an even more aggressive form of breast cancer. So I think of all the stuff I've been through, and she's going through like 18 chemotherapy treatments, and she's going to have, hers was Herceptin positive. So she has to have, you know, Herceptin for 2 years. And I just think, oh my gosh, here I am 10 months in, and she's got to at least have, you know, 2 years of treatments. So I think being supportive to other women and, you know, trying to find something where you can have that outlet is very, very important. And I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that, because it's sometimes like your saving grace to be able to write whatever it is you need to write to these women that understand, for the most part, exactly where you are. The other thing is, like, for me, prior to all of this, cancer, the word cancer to me was like a death sentence, because my father was diagnosed about 10 years ago with multiple different kinds of cancer and was dead 3 months later. So I think for me, like the minute I heard I had cancer, I was like, oh my God, like I'm gonna die. And I think what we fail to realize is how amazing and how far treatments have come, and how, you know, a lot of detection is happening earlier, and treatments are so much better. Not that they're easier by any stretch. Like my mom even said to me yesterday, gosh, I would have thought radiation had, you know, gotten better over the years, because my grandmother had breast cancer. And she's like, gosh, I'm just it's amazing that radiation all these years later is still the same. You know, they can't make it not give your skin that effect. And so I think for me, I just had to be like, I had to listen to what the doctors were saying to me, saying you have very treatable cancer. And I was like, okay, but what does that mean? Like, what do you mean treatable? Like treatable and like it's, you know, going to be completely eradicated, you know, and basically they said, you know, think about this. The minute you had your mastectomy, because I went with a double mastectomy, I had cancer throughout my left breast, so there was no way to say that. And then I had a suspicious, I can't remember what it's called, a suspicious something in my right breast that was highly likely to develop cancer, but they would have removed just the lump. But I ended up just having a double mastectomy because I was like, I cannot like worry about my boobs after this is over. So knowing that and moving forward, I was like, you know what? So they were like, you were cancer free the minute you had your breast removed, because that took all the cancer out of your body. And all of these treatments, like the radiation and the chemotherapy, are to get the dust particles, because those are things that don't register on tests that we can do. So once those, you know, treatments get into your body, it's basically like going around and like, you know, superheroing, getting all the other things that might be just, you can't see. And so I had to just really think like, okay, because the other thing I said to them is, when do I get my like PET scan or my CAT scan or whatever it is to say I've got no more cancer in my body? And they're like, oh, you don't need one of those. And I think for me, I was like, there's no like final, you know, test where you're going to look at my body and say I'm fine. And they were like, nope. And I just had to be like, okay, like these doctors have treated, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people, and I don't need that because I didn't warrant it from the type of breast cancer that I had, even though it was in my lymph nodes and all that stuff. But I was like, all right, I just have to say the drugs that they prescribed and the stuff that they did went in and did their job. And now it's on me to live a healthier lifestyle. Not that I was like super unhealthy, but it's like now it's to be more aware of what you put into your body or, you know, your environment or all that stuff to make sure that you're doing what you can for your body to help continue to fight whatever's in there or not in there, or keep it from coming back. My name is Abra Leonard, and I'm a breast cancer survivor. Oh.
How does that feel?
It feels surreal. I don't know. It feels like in some way it should be somebody else, like a, you know, I feel too young to have to, you know, say that. But at the same point, I feel strong, and I probably feel the most myself that I felt probably in the last year. Because I finally, you know, can look forward and say, you know, I write what's next. Cancer doesn't get to write what's next. It's me.